market has been fairly resilient over the last 6 months, even the last 12 months. Given that we went through a pandemic, what we've seen is actually a rebound in transaction volume. Year over year, we're actually up about 10% in transaction volume. That translates to about 900 million at this time last year, and just over 1.1 billion this time this year. So we're seeing a big shift in capital deployment. There's been a lot of capital that's been sitting on the sidelines here just during the pandemic, not seeing a lot of transactions happening, and that the pent-up demand has now been translated into what we're seeing in transaction volume in our market. We're also seeing larger transactions happening in our market, where last year this time we were at about 110 transactions, and now we're at about 125 and 130 transactions given the ones that have been reported. So larger transactions, more volume, which is counterintuitive to what's going on across Canada. When you look at other provinces, they've actually seen a little bit of a decline in transaction volume, which shows that Alberta is fairly resilient in our investment market. Investors are still coming into our borders. They see the resiliency and they see really growth potential in our market in both industrial, retail, office, multifamily. We're seeing good activity. We're actually experiencing an interesting time right now in our market where active buyers are spread pretty evenly across the board between local, high net worth families to institutional or private equity firms. What's happening is there's a little bit of a shift happening in flight to quality. So some of the institutional guys that maybe had B or C assets are shifting towards A-class assets, especially on the industrial side. We've seen some significant industrial transactions on that A-class happening in our market. And when that shift happens, that frees up some of that B and C assets, and that allows higher net worth local groups to come in and look at investing into that type of asset, which previously wasn't an opportunity that was on the table to be able to diversify and expand their portfolio. The transactions that we're seeing in our market come from all walks of different sectors. Actually, one big one that transacted here recently was Millwoods Town Centre. That sold to, I believe, McLeod Developments. And McLeod Developments, local group that bought that property for about $69 million, 409,000 square feet of enclosed shopping center. The cap rate on that one was about 10.5%, but what they're planning on doing with Millwoods Town Centre is more densification on that property. So upwards of 2,000 units, I believe, that they're planning on building on site, keeping the main floor retail, but then developing residential over the next 20 years. So that's a good example of a local buyer. What we're seeing also is groups coming up from outside of the Alberta borders, so from Vancouver or Toronto, big players out there coming into our market. We've seen Guardian Capital purchase Norwester, which is about a 78,000 square foot industrial facility in Northwest Edmonton. That was purchased at about a 7.5% cap rate, which you are now seeing that trend, just given the interest rate environment with higher cap rates. The other properties, that we've seen was properties that were acquired from partners outside of our borders, in terms of outside of Alberta and outside of Canada. One big transaction that happened was actually the sale of Champion Foods out in Atchison. Champion Foods, a huge facility there, a pet food facility, and that was acquired by Mars Pet Foods out of the States. And they acquired both the real estate and the business on that transaction, and quite a significant transaction in our market. The other transaction that we've seen in our market outside of Alberta and Canada was the sale of the Lowe's property in Northeast Edmonton. A real interesting transaction, and it was actually part of a larger portfolio sale, about $400 million across Canada. What you've seen Sycamore Partners do here recently is purchase the Lowe's businesses, and now they've come in and are acquiring the actual real estate of it. So interesting to see that there's groups that are investing in the business side of things in our market and also looking at acquiring the real estate side.